Deadheading. I found this article in a magazine from September 1977. And many years ago, during the times of the great forests that covered Michigan, the fine art of deadheading was very popular on many of the rivers and lakes where lumbering was a major industry. Millions of trees were cut down, the logs taken to rivers or lakes, and many of them wound up in the great Muskegon River flowing from Houghton Lake to Lake Michigan, with huge sawmills at Muskegon. Logs had a trademark burned into them. They were usually, they were on the ends of each of the logs that identified the owner of the log. They all wound up in the sawmill pond to await the circular saws for ordinary logs and band saws for the extra large logs. Great sawmills stood at Temple, Everett, Big Rapids, and Newaygo on the Muskegon River, taking their logs as they came down the river in the springtime. Of the many logs that floated down the river, some of them became waterlogged and sank to the bottom. Right here is where the deadheader came into action with a rowboat and a long pole that had a steel spike on the end of it. They floated down the river and stuck the pole into the bottom of the river, hoping to find a sunken log. When the steel spike hit a log, they went to work trying to pry it loose from the mud and silt and bring it to the surface and tie a chain or rope to it and haul it to the shore. Many of these sunken logs were valuable oak and maple, hardwoods that were always in demand. It was used a lot to make into strips of flooring. Hard oak properly laid, sanded, and varnished made a beautiful floor. Many folks would not dream of covering up a good hardwood floor with a wall-to-wall carpet. Once in a while, a precious walnut log would be rediscovered. Furniture factories used a lot of walnut wood in years gone by. Some of the more ingenious seekers of the old sunken logs made the recovery boats into a more convenient way of lifting the logs from the bottom with a drum winch, chains, and two rowboats that were fastened together. When a few logs had been found, tied to the boat, etc., they were taken to the shore and skidded up into a pile to dry out for a few months. No doubt there are still some logs lying at the bottom of many Michigan rivers and lakes, awaiting the searching probe of the deadheader's spiked pole. Surprisingly, many of the logs that had been submerged for years were still in fine condition. Men can still be seen in the river boats in the rivers, rowboats and long pole probing for the lost treasure of the glorious great lumbering days when forests covered the land for miles and miles. A few big black pine stumps still remain as mute witnesses of those days when the whir of the saws in the lumber mills were a common sound, and wood smoke from burning sawdust and brush dotted the horizon from morning until dusk. And with many of these stumps being part of the famed and celebrated pine stump fences of Michigan. Deadheading today is almost a lost art, as rewards become less certain, and any logs that may be found are apt to be on the soggy side, rotted away, and of no value. But the memories of the men on the rowboats with the spiked pole linger on as a reminder of the more adventurous times years ago.